And this is truly why I'm excited that we have my dear friend and pickleball partner, Gregg Renfrew, here tonight. Wicked fast on a pickleball court. And she's going to share her journey tonight and talk about how she became today one of the country's, if not the world's, most prominent social entrepreneurs, and how over the last decade she's used business as a force for good to make durable, scalable, sustainable change, both financial and social. So to set the table, before I bring her out from behind the curtain there, let me give you a little background. Back in 1990, Gregg started her first company, which eventually turned into the Wedding List, which she sold about 10 years later to Martha Stewart. Fast forward to 2013, and with the ambitious goal, we're a block away from the Lauder Institute, Gregg decided that she was going to disrupt the cosmetic industry. And she launched a company called the Beautycounter, which is a beauty brand focused on creating skincare and cosmetic products. In 2014, she was named as one of America's most creative executives by Fast Company. In 2018, she was named one of Inc. magazine's Female Founders List 100. And over the past decade, while she's been building an incredible global empire, she was also making meaningful social change by actively lobbying Congress for regulation in the cosmetic industries, by providing millions of customers with a safer and more natural skincare alternative, by creating thousands of jobs for ambitious female entrepreneurs. And if that wasn't enough, to cap it all, in the last 12 months, again, I mentioned that Gregg has mastered her pickleball game, vicious in that game, and she successfully sold Beautycounter to a private equity group for a valuation of $1 billion. I sort of feel like I have to go like this when I say $1 billion. And this sale, of course, confirms the idea that business as a force for good is just simply good business. So join me in welcoming my pickleball partner and friend, Gregg, as we talk about the journey that he's been on for the last decade. Surprise. So in advance, just to set the stage for you, we asked, raise your hand if you presented a question. We had hundreds of questions from the audience today.
And one of them's here.
And I think exactly. And we broke them down into 4 segments to talk about. And needless to say, you should feel free to go off script at any and every moment you can. The 4 segments were entrepreneurship. We want to learn about Gregg Renfrew, the entrepreneur. The female founder experience. What is it like to be a female founder of an industry and an organization that was disruptive, that was challenging to a traditionally male-dominated industry at the corporate suite? Navigating movements. I want to talk a little bit about the movements that you've had to endure and adapt to during the last 10 years of your career, and personal advice, which I think we all want to hear about. And if at the end of this session we have time, we'll open it up to some additional questions from the audience. So let's start with entrepreneurship. Lots of people, many people, the most common question is tell me about Gregg Renfrew before Beautycounter. Very broad question.
That's a question. What do you want to know? Let's see, me before Beautycounter. I mean, I can't even remember. It's sort of like myself before my children. But I would say that I have always really wanted to, from when I was really little, I always could see opportunities to do things better. I always liked working. I grew up in a family I came from a pretty well-positioned family by most standards, but my family, for a variety of reasons, fell in pretty challenging economic times, and so I grew up in a relatively financially unstable family for a while, and so I, from early on, felt really compelled to work and to have my own money and to have independence because I watched my mother struggle. Never complained, but struggled. So I think sort of pre-Beautycounter, from when I was a little girl, my mom always told me, a couple things my parents told me that I think really informed who I am today. The first is that my parents said, you can be anything you want to be. You can be the President of the United States if you want to be. You just have to be willing to work really, really hard. And I think as a young girl, that's something that's not often told. So for the women in the room, I want you to hear that you can be anything you want to be. Truly, you can. And then the second thing is my mom always said, men will come and go. She's always like, build the cake, they're just the icing. They're the icing, you're the cake. Just let's get clear on this. And they're gonna come and go, so make sure you can stand on your own 2 feet from day one. And so I was always, as a kid, like looking to earn money, working hard, wanting to be independent. And that's a little bit about me.
Was your mother a career woman?
She was. My mother had a 2-year college degree, and then she went on to work in residential real estate, and then was one of the top real estate brokers in New York City, and was on the real estate board of New York, and she was able, surprise, surprise, to be a great mom and a great businesswoman, which is always surprising to people, but she was always working.
And when you think about your mother and your father, if you had to define each with one word, what would you define your mother as?
Stable.
Stable. Okay. And what about your father?
Difficult.
And
sick. He was always sick. That was the other thing. My dad got sick when I was 14 with cancer. So he was a difficult person, and he was also sick.
Okay.
Which made
it
things interesting.
probably, laid a foundation for you to recognize quickly how important health is as a measurement of success, but also how random and fragile life can be. So you start off in your career, you build a successful business, and what in your wildest dreams would give you the confidence, the desire, the interest in trying to disrupt probably one of the greatest monopolies in the industry, which was a collective or oligopoly of corporations that dominated the cosmetic and skincare industry?
I think that a couple of things. So it wasn't one of those things where I woke up one day and said, I'm going to take on the entire beauty industry. It started with, as a young person growing up with a father who was sick. And then fast forward to 2006, I watched the film An Inconvenient Truth. How many of you have watched the film An Inconvenient Truth? Not enough. Okay, you need to watch it. And they've even done a 10-year anniversary. But that film really rocked my world. It was the first time I became aware of the fact that we as human beings were doing things that were truly detrimental to the earth. And over the next 2 years, I was living in New York. I was running a children's clothing company, and I started watching everyone I know get sick. All my friends in their 20s and 30s and 40s were getting diagnosed with different types of cancer, both women and men. I had a whole bunch of friends who were struggling with fertility issues. My best friend ultimately had a child through a surrogate, but struggled for many, many years. And other friends of mine were giving birth to kids with pretty significant health issues. And I know every one of you in this room can relate to that, because when I speak to audiences, I know that every single person with whom I talk has been touched directly or indirectly by the health issues we face today. And so knowing that there were things going wrong with the earth and knowing that there were things that were going wrong with human health, I started to connect the dots. And one of the things I came to realize is we were being exposed to toxic chemicals, and these chemicals are detrimental to the health of the earth and also human health. And with that in mind, this is a longer answer than you wanted, I started to make a lot of changes in my life. And it was really easy to do that in the areas of household cleaning product, or I could take off my shoes at the door, or I could switch from plastic to glass. But when it came to skincare, personal care, and cosmetic products, there just weren't any products that met my needs. I wanted the sex appeal of that red Chanel lipstick, sorry, because I don't know not to call it brands, but whatever, I wanted something that felt amazing, that looked amazing. Even though I'm 100, I do still try to look cute, on Friday night. It's harder every day, but I wanted to, have great products that looked good, and I wanted them to be safe, and that proposition was not out there. And so I felt that it was time to not just start another beauty brand, because we didn't need another beauty brand. We needed a movement for change, and I felt like I was the right person for the job, and I took it on.
And when you took it on, when you think about fear, is fear a motivator for you, or is fear an emotion that paralyzes you and impairs your ability to take on a challenge like that?
Well, I think that's a good question. I'm not paralyzed by fear. So that answers that question. But I would say that I recognize fear. And I think that one of the things that we do wrong when you see entrepreneurs or people in business or, whomever, famous actor, you think that they're not scared every single day. But most of the time they are pretty scared. It's just that they continue to walk through the door. Like they look at the door, they're like, shit, I don't want to go through this door, but I'm going to do it anyway because what I'm doing actually matters. And for me, it wasn't a question failure wasn't an option because the task at hand was important. But I was scared a lot of the time, and I continue to be scared. But that doesn't stop me from doing my job.
No, you do it well. I like to think that success is a three-legged stool to be successful. IQ, which is your...
I know what IQ is. I'm just saying. You guys go to Wharton, right? Last time I checked. Okay.
So you've got IQ.
We're good friends.
EQ, which is the emotional quotient. So IQ is the ability to linearly process information. EQ is the ability to process information non-linearly in the context of a human being, and AQ, which is the adaptability quotient, recognizing that regardless of how well your plan has been laid out, shit happens, as we've all experienced in our careers. When you rank your strengths, IQ, EQ, and AQ, which do you rely upon most, and has that changed over the path of your career?
That's a good question, Bobby. Let's see. That's a good question, seriously.
How's my IQ?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, my EQ is worried about how you're answering it.
Yeah. I think that I feel like there's only one business that you're ever going to be in, and that's in the business of people. I don't care what you're selling or what you're building or what you're doing. You're in the business of people, in my opinion. And so therefore, I think my emotional intelligence has played the greatest role in my ability to succeed in business. And I think secondarily, it would be my ability to adapt and to adjust quickly. Intellect is important in business, but if you look around, well, you're younger, but when you get farther into your careers, you're going to look back, and the people that were often the worst students or did the worst on the tests were the ones that are crushing it in business because they know how to relate to people, they're strong communicators, and they can adapt when they have to. And to your point, the world, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, it just changes constantly. And so you have to be capable of doing that no matter how smart you are. If you can't adapt, you're in trouble.
Yeah, perseverance, grit, adaptability. I would say that adaptability, particularly in all of your lives, is something you're facing because the world changes faster than ever. The flow of information, how vulnerable businesses can be, how global the world is, geopolitical issues, global pandemics, that can wreak havoc on industries, and the ability to adapt is critical to success. You and I talk a lot about business as a force for good. I know why I care about it. Why do you care about business being a force for good?
Well, I think it's imperative that we change the way in which we do business. I mean, we just can't go on like this. You cannot create companies like Shein that are like making a ton of money for about 2 people and then decimating the earth. I mean, I don't know if you all are watching what's going on with fast fashion, but there's only so many places that your $4 white t-shirt can be dumped when it's done, as an example. I feel like we have to prove, and the capital markets have to adjust, and we have to show people that you can be a really successful company financially. You can make money for your shareholders, and you can be a movement for change, and you can take care of your people, and you can take care of the earth. They do not need to be mutually exclusive, and they cannot be. I mean, we have to change the way we do business. And unfortunately, it's always been about a single bottom line. It's always been about money, right? The scorecard in business has always been about money. How much money did you make? How much money is your company valued at? But the reality is we've got to look at it triple bottom line. People, planet, profit. We can't just make money but decimate the earth and treat workers poorly. And I use examples of those fast fashion companies, some of whom are getting a little bit better. But mostly, if you bought that t-shirt for $4, guess what? It shouldn't cost it doesn't cost that much for them to, I mean, what are they paying the person? They've shipped it all the way from Indonesia or Vietnam or Bangladesh, and they've gotten it to you, and they've marked it all up, and they've marketed it, and you bought it for $4, and then you dump it in a month. Like, we just can't do that because someone along the way was treated really poorly in that process. And so and it's not just fast fashion, it's everything, but I think it's an example that most of us, can see right in front of us. So I feel really strongly. I also think that business has the opportunity. When I started Beautycounter, I used to say to the nonprofit organizations that consumer brands can move markets way faster than nonprofit organizations because consumers listen to brands, right? If Nike tells you to do it, you just do it, right? If you like what Apple's telling people follow what they're doing. So we have an opportunity to use business as a vehicle through which you can create really meaningful change. And I think that that's an enormous opportunity for all of us.
I mean, obviously, historically, the sole metric of success for business has been making money. And the whole structure of compensation and rewards to people that run business has been compensation. Which will be more effective to change the outlook, change the disposition of business leaders to look differently at business as a force for good? And is that going to be a carrot, or is that going to be a stick? A stick being possibly legislation. a carrot being an incentive to reward companies. I for one will tell you that, for the last 25 years, I have been fighting an uphill battle trying to convince private equity companies, investors, foundations, pension funds that doing good and doing well were not exclusive. But the reality is that the vast majority of investors, back then with my first partnership in 1998 with Magic Johnson, even to today, the vast majority of investors do not believe that profits and purpose can play nicely in the sandbox. They actually believe that if you superimpose a social metric or an environmental metric or something that's good for society, if you superimpose that on a business model, that's going to come at a sacrifice in yield. I think that there is a dearth of examples of businesses that have proven the correlation that there's actually a symbiotic relationship between profits and purpose, that business as a force for good is actually good business. You went into Beautycounter taking a risk. Was your product more expensive than competing products? Because obviously you were purging or divesting of bad chemical ingredients. That probably costs more. Were your investors concerned that by creating a product that was good for the environment, good for the human beings, but cost more, that would dramatically reduce the potential sales and the market for your industry, for your business?
When I started Beautycounter, I had the confidence in myself to say to my shareholders, as I was going out to raise capital, I am onto something that's really important. I know that consumers are going to reward us with their business because people care about their health. We all want to be healthy. We all want our family members to be healthy, and we're all watching too many people get sick. And so I'm going to take this all the way to Washington. I'm going to change the laws, which have not been updated on a federal level since 1938. And if you don't want to play ball in that way, with me really focused on my mission as a mission first, authentically trying to operationalize my brand promise to consumers every single day, don't invest in this business. And so for me, right out of the gate, I was unapologetic about it. And they did all still invest, or maybe some weren't going to, but the ones I wanted came in. But I think what you also said earlier is, I think, important, which is our board of directors is a B corporation. How many of you guys know B corporations? Okay, so they're based here in Philly. So B corporations are companies that put into emphasis people, planet, profit. So you can't just sell to the highest bidder if they're not taking care of the world. You can't do these things, and you have to be looking at all of those pillars at the time of sale or every decision along the way. And so as a board, we were held to certain standards, and so we had to. Part of our entire company's bonus structure was based on our ability to perform against the things that we put, whether it was a sustainability measure or social impact or our advocacy efforts. So I think it's important that the companies motivate the executives and all team members that part of their bonus is not just about making money, but is doing what the company set out to do if it's in the mission. But I also think that the markets have got to start, paying attention to the fact that the consumers are rewarding the companies that are doing a good thing. And if you're not paying attention to the consumers, then you're not really in the business world, because the consumers are increasingly putting demands on companies, holding these companies accountable, and they're voting with their wallets every single day. Every time you guys purchase anything, you are voting with your wallet. I don't care if you're buying a coffee or a carton of milk or a T-shirt. And so I think that is starting to change things a little bit.
Yeah. I think that I read I forget the name of the report that I read every year, talked about 68% of college students would pay more for a product that they believed represented the values they had. Is that fair? Would you pay more for a product if you felt that product represented your values? Yes. Raise your hand. And 75% of students stopped supporting a brand because they felt that it did not represent. So I think you're right that the new form of activism is voting with their wallet, it's shopping. And companies that candidly don't recognize that they won't survive. But yet there still are industries and there still are ideas that don't agree, don't believe. The Business Roundtable, which is this a very erudite think tank in Washington 3 years ago, came out with great fanfare, and I think it was a check the box comment, that business, the definition of a corporation, the purpose of a corporation, had to be changed. It could no longer just be the responsibility of a corporation is for the benefit of shareholders. It had to expand. It was great fanfare. But I think when you go back and you look at Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan and many of these other titans of industry, if you then hold them accountable in their business lives, do you think they've done much to truly employ and adopt responsible practices, both environmentally and socially responsible practices in their business?
I think a lot of it is performative. I also think it's complicated. It's not easy, but I think that again, if you don't hold yourself to that standard, you're just not going to meet it. So you got to hold yourself accountable for change, and most people don't like to change.
No. Do you see a little bit of moral flexibility in corporations today? That, by way of example, I was watching the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and I saw there was an ad for Budweiser beer. And they were very proud to say that Budweiser beer is now being brewed using wind energy. And I'm thinking to myself, what the F does wind energy have to do with Budweiser beer? Being environmentally responsible doesn't make alcohol a noble enterprise. Do you see a bit of this sort of moral flexibility in the industry?
Yeah. I mean, in the beauty industry, for sure. I mean, there are a lot of walks for breast cancer, and yet if you just took some of the ingredients out of the products that you're selling to the women that are walking because they have breast cancer, like, we wouldn't all be getting breast cancer. And it's not that it's just people are getting breast cancer from their skincare and color cosmetics. And by the way, just to be clear for all you guys in the room, this is you too. It's your deodorant, it's your shave cream, it's your shampoo, your body wash, your sunscreen. So it's not.
Some of the guys, it's shampoo.
Well, not everybody wears. Yes. This is true. Yes, but hopefully you wear deodorant sometimes. But it's everything, and so I think that people they're talking about these things. They've got these huge foundations, but they're not actually just changing the ingredients in the products that they're selling to all of us. And by the way, they're misleading you. Right? There was a study done a couple of years ago on aloe-based products, and they did an assessment of 38 products in the market, from, I'm going to make it up, Bloomingdale's to Target to Walmart to whatever, Whole Foods. And guess what? Not a single one of them had a drop of aloe in them. So whatever they're saying to you, that it's all natural or preservative-free or whatever, 9 times out of 10, it's just not. And that's a real bummer. So yeah, people, for sure, there's a lot of...
I want to ask you a little bit about something that is fleeting for most people, and that's happiness. And when you think about what the foundation for happiness is, because I think of you as an incredibly happy person, but I think you have the adaptability and the fierceness that when you're unhappy, you make changes quickly. For me personally, happiness was a 4-step program. For me to be happy, I recognized that there had to be some sense of wealth, some sort of base foundation. It's really hard. When you think about America, when 78% of families are living paycheck to paycheck, that's one healthcare issue away from eviction. So, money won't make you happy, but I think that money creates a foundation for happiness in which you can build. The second thing for me was love. And I know that some people say, well, how can love be the second most important thing for your happiness? But raise your hand if you're an ambitious person. Okay? Raise your hand if you think you'll spend more of your waking hours at work than you will at home. Yeah. So you can't rely upon the home life and love to build your happiness. The third thing for me was the opportunity to achieve. And I think it's really important to get up every day, and I know you do, and fight for something you care about. There's that old expression, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And it's really true. I mean, I think we're both very fortunate. One of the reasons we're such good friends is we both pinch ourselves every day and say, how did we ever get so lucky in our lives? And we recognize that we weren't entitled to our luck, and we appreciate it. And number 4, for me, was power. And not the power to control or manipulate, but rather the power to have a positive impact on other people's lives. For you, when you think about the steps, the foundation of happiness, first of all, are you happy? And what's the foundation of what has made you happy in your career and in your life?
So I do think that, yes, money is important in that it makes life easier, but it doesn't make me happy. I think what makes me happy, the thing that I've loved the most, I mean, you can say all the things that we all talk about. We, of course, love our children and our spouses and our family, and all that is critically important. But I love what I do, and I love helping people. And the reason I came here tonight, because it's completely out of the way because I live in Los Angeles, and it's not just because we play pickleball together and I like you, but it's also because you said this. You know what? There aren't a lot of people in this room. It's raining, and there are not as many people as we wish we were talking to when we walked in, and you said something which I think is true, which is if we can just make one person's life better, or just change one of the way that one of you in this room thinks, then we're changing the world. And I think what makes me happy is taking all the gifts that I was given and imparting them, like helping other people succeed with their lives, especially women, but not exclusively women. That makes me happy. You know, so does a good glass of wine. And so does, like, you know, rocking out, like blasting the tunes in my car on a great day, you know, with my kids laughing. But, you know, I think it's, you know, to me, for me, I have to have purpose. I want to make an impact on the world. And I always said when I started Beautycounter, that when I turned 40, that if I had died that day, would I have achieved all that I could in this world? And by most standards, you could say I had a successful career, I had a successful marriage, I had 3 great kids. But it wasn't enough. Like, that wasn't enough. And so the day that I do die, which I hope I got a long way to go, I want to know that I gave it my all, and that I gave as much to this world and to people as I can. And that makes me happy. And that includes my children and my children's friends and my family members and all of you, because let's all focus on how to make everyone else's lives better, especially those of us who are incredibly fortunate.
Yeah. The pursuit of excellence at the expense of greatness. Does that resonate with you?
Because my IQ is lower than yours. Because I went to University of Vermont. I didn't get into, well, I didn't apply here, but wouldn't have even wasted my time. I wouldn't have gotten in. But do you mean that people strive for excellence and therefore, define what you mean by that?
I think that everyone here is an overachiever. Everyone here is incredibly smart. I don't know about their adaptability quotient, because you're not born with that. You'll figure it out. Your emotional quotient, I don't know. But I think that we're all taught here at the Wharton School that you strive for excellence. And excellence is really tough to achieve.
Progress versus perfection.
Yeah.
That's my entire motto. In fact, it was funny, this woman who sells Beautycounter products texted me this morning, and I could have lied, because I'm the queen of the non-toxic, and she goes, I love that nail polish I saw on Instagram yesterday. What was it? And I was like, oh, shit. I was like, it's toxic. And she just texted me back, but you always say, Greg, progress versus, you know, because I was traveling and I got my nails done, right? And I bring this up because I'm super honest about it. Like, it is progress versus perfection. None of us are perfect, and no company's perfect, and no movement is perfect, and no marriage is perfect. And if you're striving for excellence, that doesn't mean that I didn't get really irritated when people like made unforced errors and just were careless. I mean, there is a desire to do. I would hope you do a really good job, that you do the best job you can with the gifts that you've been given in life at whatever you're doing, whether that's your schoolwork, your marriage, your being a parent. You do your best. But I think that if you're trying to be perfect, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Ever. And I see so many, especially the pressure on you guys to these kids. It's like, oh my God, parents on the sideline screaming at their 7-year-old is playing soccer, you know, they didn't get the ball, and you think, to what end? Is this? It's not going to actually help the kid be a great kid.
I heard my wife made a comment the other night, you know, how you do anything is how you do everything. That brings me over to the next section, female founder experience. I know it's a too large of a question, but there's sub questions of it. What's your experience of being a woman? I'm going to ask 3 questions together, and you can answer it, none, all, and how you want to answer it. But what's your experience of being a woman in business? Are women helping women? And followed by, are men supporting women?
I'm going to work backwards. Men have been incredibly instrumental in my career. The notion that either men or women or anyone could be successful in the absence of the other gender, race, whatever, is preposterous. So I think I've had a lot of men who've played a really just huge, have been hugely supportive of me. And interestingly enough, for whatever reason, and I'm a very pro-women woman, but I find it's easier for me to be totally honest about what I want in life with my male counterparts than it is with women at times. Women can be intimidated by one another, or they can be competitive with one another. Now, do I think women support women? Yes. Do I think there are a lot of big-time leaders out there that don't really support women that say they do? Yes. I think there are a dearth of female leaders that are aspirational enough and accessible who genuinely care about helping women. But I do think the solution comes in men, all of us working together as a unified group. And I always say for Beautycounter, it was a movement built for and by women and a few good men, because it wasn't one or the other. The first question you said, that was a two. What was the first one?
Yeah, the first one was just what's your experience of being a woman in business?
Oh, a woman in business. Yeah. Well, I started my career, not quite exactly date-wise as he said it. So I lived in Hong Kong and worked at a trading desk. And let me tell you, that was like a really, being in finance in Hong Kong as a young woman, I have had those crazy moments, right, that women talk about. I would say that if you are a woman, if you identify as a woman, that you have the opportunity to view it as an asset or a liability. I would tell you, from my perspective, it is an asset, not a liability. And so if you go throughout your business career, whether you're a founder or you're an executive, and you have a chip on your shoulder because you think the world is trying to get you all the time, it's just not going to be that productive. So instead, think about the ways in which you can use your power as a woman. Be confident that you are. There are a lot of times you can sneak up on people that aren't expecting you to come at them, or do things a little bit differently. And the emotional intelligence and the vulnerability and the ability to be, more feminine is increasingly important in business. And I think it's a huge opportunity for women right now. But it hasn't always been easy.
That then leads into the next question. Talk about mentors in your life. Are you a mentee? Are you a mentor? And how should students here today think about identifying mentors in their lives? You and I are blessed that we can be both at this point. I'm still learning. I'm still evolving. Folks here today are looking for mentors. Do you have a mentee you look to, and do you have a mentor?
I have not had one specific, person that was an incredible mentor to me that I can point to and say, oh, that person, taught me so much. I have at moments in time reached out to people and asked one of the things for those of you who are studying business and want to be running companies or entrepreneurs, knowing where you're strong and where you're weak and being unapologetic when you need to ask for help because you have no idea what you're doing will help you very much. I don't have a whole lot of belief in arrogance in the business world. I don't think it gets you very far. So when I've needed help, I've reached out to people who I felt had greater experience or knowledge than I do on the regular. I do it all the time. And I'll give you an example also of asking for help. How many of you have read Bob Iger's book, The Ride of a Lifetime? Wow. Okay. There's your homework assignment. Go read his book. It's really interesting. So do you guys know who Bob Iger is? Ish. Does anyone know who Bob Iger is?
Small world story, Bob Iger is married to a Wharton graduate.
Well, good. Willow's amazing. Okay, so Bob Iger, has been the CEO of Disney. You guys have heard of Disney, right? So he wrote this book. Anyway, this has nothing to do with it. He wrote this incredible book that moved me greatly, that really gave me, so I get it from people because I meet them. I get things from people because I read their books. So I read this book. It actually changed the trajectory of my life because I decided not to sell to a strategic, but actually to sell to a private equity firm when I sold Beautycounter so that I could continue to build the movement in the company. But I reached out to him to say, I read your book. It moved me greatly. I've met you once before at a dinner. You may or may not remember me. This is who I am, and I'm asking you to spend some time with me. I need some advice. And what I have found is great people will do that for you. And he did. He emailed me back within a couple of hours and said, let's meet in 2 days. And we spent a couple of hours together. So I've had people like him who've helped me in moments of time, but I don't have one mentor. I have an incredible executive coach who I rely on, a guy named Khalid Halim, who's been so instrumental in my life in helping me navigate difficult conversations, knowing when I'm being too emotional, whatever. In terms of the mentee, I would hope that the women who've built the movement with me side by side and those that have worked with me at Beautycounter and along the way, even though they would say I'm a total pain in the ass a lot of the time, that they would say that I made them better. I would hope that they would find that I've been accessible to them, that I've tried to lift them up with me, that I've been in the trenches with them, and I've tried to give them sound advice that's been helpful. I don't have one mentee, but I have a lot of people that I would hope would say that I made some difference in their trajectory of their lives.
My last woman as a founder question. Can you have it all? As a woman founder, can you be that gladiator, that titan of industry? Can you be that partner to someone in life? And can you be that parent without sacrificing?
I don't know if you, I mean, I think there are always sacrifices. I have said for many, many years that you can, and I believe this to be true, and there are people that would disagree with me. But as a woman, I would say that you can absolutely have it all. You just might not be able to have it all on the same day. There are days that I have 3 children, and there are days that I'm really unapologetically focused on my kids. Like, you know, my son broke his collarbone. I got on the plane. I was with him this weekend. Like, that was important to me. As a woman in business, I always pick up the phone when my kids call. I don't care who I'm talking to. I don't care if I'm sitting with the President of the United States, which I'm not, and I haven't. But if I were, I really wouldn't care, because my kids needed to know that I was there on the other end of the phone, because I've traveled incessantly. There are times when I say to my family, like, peace out. Like, I got this crazy conference coming up, and I'm speaking in front of X thousand people, and I'm not going to be, you know, around for the next week. And I think and then my husband, well, I don't know, you know, he would probably say, yeah, I don't know what he would say. I mean, I think I try to be a good wife. It's not always easy. No, I think that, I do really think you can have it. But, you know, there may be months or years where you're really focused. You know, for me, what I have sacrificed, Bobby, is I've been ruthless in my prioritization. I mean, Lauren knows this. I mean, because we've been friends, and I mean, how many times have I hung out with my girlfriends in LA in the last 10 years? I mean, almost never. So what I would say to people when I would go to school, and you guys will probably laugh at me and think I'm a jerk, but I would say, you know what, thank you so much for inviting me to go for a hike after drop off, and I know you want to get together with me and get to know one another, because our daughters are in the same class, or our sons in the same class. The reality of the situation is it's never going to happen. So I'm just telling you in advance so I don't let you down, because I have to prioritize my time right now. And I am running a company and a movement. I have 3 children and I have a husband. And so I don't have the capacity to make new friends at this moment. There may be a moment later on, but I just want you to tell you it's not personal. It's just where I am in my life. So I do think there are sacrifices made, but you've got to decide what is important to you in that time. And for me, it was my family and Beautycounter. And I just didn't develop a lot of new relationships. I'm starting to, but I mean, for 10 years, I basically never saw anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exaggerating, but, you know, if it wasn't with the kids. So I think you can have it all. And it saddens me when I hear, especially being said to women, but also increasingly to men, that there's a choice between being a great parent and a great business person. I'm going to totally call bullshit on that. Like, I think my kids are amazing. I think actually me not always being there has made them become more self-sufficient and resilient. And I think that if you're there in the important moments in time, that's enough. You know, a small amount of your undivided attention in your spouse or partner's life or your kid's life can fill up their cups way faster than you being, you know, everything to everyone. And I think we got to stop telling people that they have to make a choice. Because, by the way, we need women right now in the workforce. Sorry, I know this isn't what you're asking, but this is critically important. Like, the world needs us right now. We cannot keep stepping away. Please, if you guys go to Wharton Business School, please don't step out because someone who's probably older than you is telling you can't be a great wife, mother, and business person. That's just not true. It's just not true.
So perfect segue for me, because the third chapter of this interview is navigating movements. And DEI, diversity, equity, and equality is very Depeche Mode. Not the band that you and I, you know, we used to listen to
I know what you're doing.
in high school, but
yes,
it's very fashionable.
They can't even laugh because they don't know what it is.
You know, and I always say that diversity for the sake of checking a box is misguided. But there's a lot of political pressure, shareholder pressure, societal pressure to have diversity. Why is diversity important?
Well, I think that at the end of the day, businesses that listen to different points of view, that use the power of the collective voice through different experiences and different points of view and different skill sets, they just outperform. So it's just a fact that if you put all the same people in the same room that all look alike and think alike, that the business will be less successful than if you mix it all up and give people their voice. So that's the first thing. I mean, I think it's important because people matter. And as I said earlier, there's only one business you're ever going to be in, and that's in the business of people, no matter what you're selling. And if you aren't building a business that is thinking first and foremost about people and what they need, doesn't mean you'll never make everyone happy. I can promise you that. It's impossible running a company today because everyone's unhappy with everything you do. And it's really, really, it's very difficult for people to be in the hot seat because it's not even specific to diversity. It's just in general, you can't win. But I think that embracing people, giving them voice, finding common ground, and then using their shared values to move things forward will make businesses more successful, people more successful, movements more successful.
I like to say that diversity is a competitive advantage if it's done correctly, because that broader perspective helps the decision-making process because you have broader perspectives identifying, quantifying, and mitigating risks. Is there a place for politics in business? Should businesses take a stand on social issues, on legal issues? Is there a place for politics?
So you know that, I have been very involved on the political side for this movement because we haven't updated a major federal law since 1938, right? And so the one that exists was before we put the many tens of thousands of chemicals into commerce, starting in World War II. So for me, the political work that we do on the state, federal level, and also in Canada has been critically important to me from day one. Not because I'm a politician, but because I think that we had to hit it. What we always had said, we built Beautycounter on this trifecta. We educate, arm you with information so you can make informed choices. We formulate, we use commerce as an engine for change by providing you with a safer solution in the marketplace. And we advocate tirelessly for cosmetic reform because at the end of the day, you asked me this question earlier, our products are inaccessible to many people. It is expensive to make high performance products with the sustainability measures, with recyclable, or refillable packaging and safer ingredients. So for us, if we don't change the laws, then someone for whom whatever company or who can only shop at a certain store because that's what's accessible to them financially will be subjected unnecessarily to toxic chemicals. So I think that the answer to your question is yes. With that said, I think only if it's authentic and purposeful. I don't think it's like politics for the sake of it. I think there are a lot of brands that claim to be mission oriented right now because it's like the cool thing to be. But if you're not getting up every morning to operationalize that brand promise, to live your mission authentically like a company like Patagonia does, then I don't think that you should be getting into it politically.
I want to be a little more provocative on this question now.
Oh, God, okay.
Roe v. Wade. A woman's right to choose. Your client, predominantly, and I actually like Counterman product, but you have a customer who's predominantly women. Not every woman believe in a woman's right to choose.
For sure.
By taking a position or a stance as a president, as a leader in a skincare and beauty company, is there a role that you should be playing, or do you have to sit on the sideline because you don't want to alienate half of your potential customers? How do you navigate that?
It's really, really complicated. That's a really good question. So I have, since Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, spent an inordinate amount of my time seeking to understand the issues and the points of view on both sides of the aisle on a whole variety of subjects. I was really, really upset when Donald Trump was elected, and I made it very clear to the then 50,000 women who were selling Beautycounter that I was really upset. And man, did I get backlash from a lot of people. And so I started picking up the phone and calling all these people that were sending me all this hate mail, asking them why they had voted for Trump so I could understand. And I got a lot of answers, and it was really interesting for me. We as a company made a decision about 2 years ago that we were going to focus and take positions on things that touched directly or were adjacent to our particular issue about making the world safer, like toxic chemical exposures, things like that. Because what we found was in getting involved in every single issue, it was literally detracting us. Like we couldn't get our jobs done because everyone has a difference of opinion on every single subject, and whatever we were doing wasn't good enough. And so on the particular issue of Roe v. Wade, I mean, I'm personally devastated, but I represent a number of women for whom, because of their because of their religious beliefs, they don't believe in a woman's right to choose. And so when I started Beautycounter, it was a movement for all people, rooted in love, to make the world safer and healthier for all people. And so it's not about making money. It's about doing what's right for my particular mission, not because and so in that particular issue and others, I will give money, I will do things personally, but as a company, I have decided that I can't undo the thing that we said, which is we all take our differences of opinion, we all find what's our common values, and we're going to move forward as a collective voice. And by whether it's politics or a million different things, we have chosen to just focus on the things that are specific to our company. And it's really hard. It's a very hard decision, and there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It's extremely complicated.
Yeah. And like from my perspective, I fight it every day. When you're on the front line for social justice and equality, even in public education, you would think that everybody in the world would believe that there should be a fair and level playing field for every child, that education should be about children. But you'd be surprised how many people in this country don't believe that education should be about children first, it should be about adults. And these are challenging. How do you not alienate? So you pick issues that are, again, consistent with your company's values as opposed to your individual and personal values.
You have to create, I think that one of the things that's important for companies is you have to, for us at least, it was creating a safe space. Because what I did love, the thing that I'm most proud of about Beautycounter is that I could take this like totally random mix of people and we could find common ground and we could use the power of our collective voice. And so when we're fighting over politics or issues, then we lost our power. Yeah. And I wanted to gain that back. And people felt safe with us, that they were accepted for who they were, irregardless, of their political affiliation or whatever.
So rounding home plate now. Personal advice. You look out at this ambitious group of people who are, I would not want to be graduating college today.
You'd have hair.
Barely.
I think there's there's some good reasons for graduating college.
I adapted well. When I met my wife, she sort of looked at me, and I had lots of hair here and a little bit of hair here, and she says 2 words, Bruce Willis. I said, I don't understand. She goes, okay, 2 words, Michael Jordan.
There you go.
And I'm like, not fast. I'm like, what do you, anyway. For everyone here who wants to be an entrepreneur, and by the way, be careful what you wish for. You and I both share the journey of being an entrepreneur. It's lonely. It's hard. It's overwhelming. People say, what do you worry about at night? I'm like, what don't I worry about at night? The people that work with you are not your friends. You have to be really careful. It comes at sacrifice. But if you still want to be an entrepreneur, what sort of words of advice would you give today's audience that made you a better entrepreneur?
I think that, I said one of those things. One thing I said before I would reiterate, which is really know and really genuinely know this. Where are you really strong and where are you really weak? Because I promise you're both of those things. You just are. So knowing your strengths and weaknesses will allow you to put people around you that can amplify you and your efforts. And if you're trying to be good at everything all the time or think you know everything, you don't, and you'll put the wrong people around you. So I think that's one piece of advice that I would give people. I would also, especially people who are sitting in business school, and I said this to Carlisle Group when I sold the company, I was like, I don't care what it says in black and white on paper. Like, that is not the real world. Like, you're going to be constantly challenged with things that you can never anticipate. And so being able to look to directionally where things are going and being able to change on a dime is really, really important as an entrepreneur. I think that one of the things that I learned over time, and I think this is maybe more towards women, but maybe not necessarily, is I became a much better CEO when I stopped trying to be liked all the time and I stopped trying to keep everyone happy. You are never going to keep everyone happy, no matter what. It's just impossible. And so your ability to turn to your team and say, the train is leaving the station at 5:01. You're either on the train with me or you're off the train. I understand you disagree. You have two choices. You either disagree and commit, or you disagree and you go. But I can't sit here changing my vision for this company or my leadership to adapt to every single person's individual needs. If you could communicate that effectively, like on the regular, you will be a strong leader. And it took me a long time to get there because I used to get my feelings hurt, when people didn't like me or they'd be mad at me or whatever. But it's actually people. It's sort of like children. They want you to sort of direct them and sort of be that.
My mother always said that if everyone likes you, you're doing something wrong. And as an entrepreneur, you can't have everyone like you. In my business, I've made it very clear that I want to hear everyone's opinion. I do. That's diversity. That helps me make a better decision. But let's be clear. This is not a democracy. This is candidly a beneficial or a kind dictatorship. Because that's how you have to run a business. You'll listen, but it's a benevolent dictatorship. I want to end with one question. Raise your hand if in your mind, and close your eyes for a second, if you think 30 or 40 years from now you have a destination. We all have a narrative that we've created. Raise your hand if you have a narrative that you've created. And you're going to spend your life trying to achieve that narrative. And I will be really clear with all of you that if you spend your life focused on that destination, you will not live your life. And life is what passes you by when you don't look at all the exit ramps that exist. When you're solely focused on that excellence, life won't be so good because that narrative is going to change and you need to change with it. If this were a commencement speech and you're talking to this graduating class at the Wharton School, what one or two words of wisdom would you want to impart upon these future leaders?
Don't drink Diet Coke. Or any of that really toxic stuff that all of you guys. That's kind of a joke, but not really. And wear sunscreen. Those are two things I would tell you. I would tell you probably a couple little things rather than one big, I would tell you to be a good friend and to be a good partner to people. I know that sounds like super cliche, but I don't always think that people are good friends, especially girls. I always say, got to play for the girls' team. I think that communications, like write thank you notes, thank people, be generous with your thank yous. It's amazing how short-sighted people can be. And you know what? The business world, your life in the business world will be a lot longer than you think, and people remember these things. So be respectful, be on time, write thank you notes, learn how to communicate effectively with people. It will serve you really, really well. Don't look for other people to validate you. Like, you know what you want to do. Every one of you in this room is a determined person, or you wouldn't be here. So follow that gut instinct and don't let people put chinks in your armor. Don't wait for someone to tell you that your idea is good or you're good enough. They're not going to. And in fact, the better the idea that you have, the smarter that you are, the better business person you are, the more people that will be telling you can't do it. So don't listen to them. Just stay the course, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, surround yourself with people who amplify you. Don't look for other people to validate you. Be a good friend, be a good partner, be a strong communicator, be thankful.
I would like to thank you for being a friend, for being a mentee and a mentor to me, but having the capacity in your life to spend your time with all of us today and share your wisdom. You are vulnerable, which I think is incredibly beautiful in a human being. It takes courage, but you have that. So if everyone would join me in thanking Gregg for her time and her...